All right. Good morning and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today on our third session of the Experts Exchange series presented by Kelly Science and Clinical. I'm Brad Sibbald. I'm our domain leader and vice president here at Kelly. And it's my privilege and pleasure to welcome you and kick off this insightful day of events that we have entitled The New Biomanufacturing Landscape: Discover the Skills that you need to succeed. So our goal in this session is really to delve into the critical skills required in this rapidly evolving biomanufacturing space. We're going to explore the industry's current landscape and how the future of talent plays such a pivotal role in that. Today, we're going to address lots of questions, such as, what skills or attributes make a difference? Maybe which strategic partnerships will keep you relevant, visible, and more successful, or how you can enhance your network and leverage industry connections as it continues to evolve. The landscape of biomanufacturing is always undergoing significant transformations. Some notable developments include last year's executive order from the Biden administration, which was aimed at advancing biomanufacturing innovation and broadening America's bioeconomy. Moreover, the infusion of automation and machine learning is reshaping the industry. It's allowing for increased capacity and efficiency on the front lines. We're also noticing new breakthroughs almost daily in the capacities of cell and gene therapies to prevent and even cure orphan diseases. Yet, we are still facing ongoing challenges to ensure that our supply chain is resilient and remains a top priority. So, to shed light on these really pressing issues, we have the privilege of hosting three distinguished industry experts today. First, let me extend a warm welcome to Bob Munday, the Executive Vice President of Piramal Pharma. With decades of manufacturing leadership, Bob brings a unique geographic perspective, overseeing not only operations in Kentucky here in the US, but also Ireland, while working for a company that's headquartered in India. So his insights into the global biomanufacturing capability will undoubtedly enrich this discussion. Also joining us is Natalie Friel, site head and general manager of the Resilience Boston franchises. Natalie's career journey, transitioning not only from the US military into biotech, through quality, and now leading one of the fastest growing CDMO conglomerates in the US, provides a fascinating perspective on skills essential for success in this dynamic landscape. And last but certainly not least, we're honored to have Rashid Beyah, Director of Operations for the Gardasil Manufacturing Facility at Merck in Durham, North Carolina. With over 15 years at one of the most respected companies in the world, Rashid will bring insights into talent development and diversity, providing valuable perspectives on navigating a successful career in biomanufacturing. So, as we explore these themes today, let's consider that intersection of innovation, skills, and industry dynamics. And I encourage you all to actively engage with this esteemed panel session, leveraging their wealth of knowledge. So I ask you, please leverage the chat feature as we're having our discussion and throw your questions in the chat. And we'll get to those questions at the end. So without further ado, let's dive into the discussion with our first question. This is for everybody. If you could please introduce yourself, a little bit more about your current role, and briefly explain why this topic is maybe important to you and the organization you're representing today. Bob, if you don't mind, I'll start with you.
Sure. So thanks for the introduction. So as said, my name is Bob Munday. I'm with Piramal Pharma Solutions. I've got over 25 years in the industry. I actually oversee 4 facilities located in North America, US, UK, Scotland, and India. I focus on aseptic and biologics, not Ireland, Scotland. That's quite all right. And we go from MAB all the way through DP in Lexington, Kentucky. Specifically, these topics are important to feed our industry and our company specifically on talent. You grow the business by having the right talents in the right spot at the right time, right? We have very talented people, and very talented people want to grow also. So you got to keep feeding that pipeline. So that's why this really interests me.
Awesome. Well, again, thank you so much for coming. Natalie, how about for you?
Hi, everyone. Glad to be here. My name is Natalie Friel. I'm a site head and general manager for 2 of our facilities at Resilience, and also leading the global supply chain. And Resilience is actually a startup technology-focused biomanufacturing company. And so this is my first startup experience. But I've been in the biotech industry for over 17 years, and I've worked at 5 different manufacturing facilities at various locations, both in the US and abroad. And this topic is super important, and also something that I'm very passionate about. Specifically for resilience, it's important because we're hiring actively for over 375 roles throughout our network. And so there's a lot of business growth. In particular, for example, one of our sites in Westchester, Ohio, is going through a major expansion. And we have over 9 locations that are posting positions. So this topic is very important to our company and to me.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Rashid?
Hi, happy to be with you today. Rashid Beyah, and I've been with Merck for 15 years now. And that's been the entirety of my time spent in the pharmaceutical industry. Engineer by education, and was in a different industry prior to joining Merck, but since certainly recognize how critical skills are so important to business success. Currently we're building a new manufacturing facility that's going to be able to deliver Gardasil. And since licensure of Gardasil back in 2006, we've just seen global demand increase for this so important vaccine to be able to help prevent cervical cancer and other related illnesses worldwide. It's important to recognize that with the aggressive schedule to get a facility built and then to get the manufacturing process qualified and then ultimately licensed to distribute, having a workforce that's skilled and ready is critically important. So our ability to be able to hire a significant amount of folks to be able to build our workforce targets and then have them trained and qualified to be able to execute on the operations needs is very important for us. That's really the point of emphasis here today. And there's a lot of strategies that Merck is developing, as well as other companies across the industry, to ensure that we have a very strong pipeline, not just for today, but for the future and some of the new products that are coming through.
I can't agree with you more. Speaking with lots of companies, everybody's saying the same thing is, there is a war for talent, especially specialty talent in certain geographic markets. So today we're going to break this thing up into basically 3 sections. Our first section that we're going to talk about is recruiting and upskilling. And so these are really, really important questions to the talent listening today to give them some of those legs up that from your perspective. So our first question is, what are you paying attention to when you recruit and you interview talent in your companies? What skills or traits make a difference for you? And I'll ask Bob to take this first one, if you don't mind.
So thanks. This is a really important area. We have 15 sites across 3 continents, so we recruit from the lowest level floor person all the way through the top executives that are running multiple sites, right? And when I look at the ones that are management level and above, being able to work with a culture that's different than their own is very key to us because, US culture, UK culture, India culture, they're all 3 unique and diverse. And they all have pros and cons, right? And being able to listen and understand and work across those continents is key. Clearly, some of the leadership roles that are regional type roles or maybe global roles, you're looking for somebody who is going to work in a matrix organization. And matrix organization means nobody reports to you fully, right? So you're trying to get resources in some other group somewhere else to do something for you. And if you don't understand the cultures that you're dealing with, the Indian or the UK or the US cultures, you may try to apply your approach, and that may not work very well. An Indian approach to something may not work in the US and vice versa. United Kingdom has its own flow with, holidays are very important, vacations are very important, and some of the pushes from India would not work there, right? So it's being able to work across those diverse cultures. Also, we look for diversity, right? So I think we're spread pretty good on diversity, but we always want to grow that. Females in India, we're looking for more of those and to bring those up through the larger roles. and that's a challenge sometimes. So those are the big things. I talked about the matrix side. When the matrix is going on, it's not just the cultural aspects and the fact that somebody doesn't report to you, but it's also the time differences. If I look at, US, we're 9.5 hours behind India. So you're trying to set, and then UK is about 5 hours, right? So you're trying to set up meetings and be respectful of everybody across the organization so that, somebody's not up at 2 a.m. while you're up at 4 p.m., right? So, it's for the larger role is being able to understand that, apply that, and bend your schedule to help those others in the other cultures, because you'll get rewards for recognizing their time zones and their constraints too. So those are the big areas that we really see.
I appreciate that. Yeah, and if you don't mind, I'll turn now to Rashid and say, in this rapidly evolving industry that we're trying to keep up with, how in a large organization like Merck, how are you staying relevant? What initiatives are you guys undertaking to upskill your current workforce or maybe prepare for the future workforce?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think it's worth it to recognize, right, that within our industry, and particularly so I'm just going to focus more domestically, there's certain regions of the country where there's significant activity that's occurring. So I'm in Durham, North Carolina, and we're part of the Research Triangle Hub. Right, this region of the country, you have so many different organizations that are here, focused on the life sciences, biotech industry, and it is there's some ruthless competition that's going on to be able to attract, and not just attract good talent, but also being able to retain good talent. Right, in the real estate industry, you have buyers markets and sellers markets, but here right now, it's more of a candidates market where you essentially have your pick of the litter if you have the relevant skills and obviously positive working experience. But the things that we're trying to do here down in Merck Durham to stay relevant is we recognize that we need to, this from a recruiting standpoint, we need to make sure that we have a very positive culture. And we can't just sell that just by word of mouth, because as I said before, there's so many folks that are former Merck colleagues that have moved on to other pharmaceutical companies, and word gets around. So it has to be more than just some lip service. You need to make sure that you have a very strong, positive workplace culture. You need to ensure that you're focusing on having a very robust position as it pertains to diversity, inclusion, equity. These are the types of things that candidates are really looking for, because they understand that in this market, as well as if you're in a startup where you're building a new facility, there's going to be some long days, right? Probably some very complex challenges that you're being faced with. And if you have a very strong, positive working environment, it makes those difficult challenges that much easier to go about tackling and overcoming. So those are two key pieces that we focus on. In addition to that, from an upskilling perspective, we have developed some partnerships across the state of North Carolina. We have an existing partnership with BTech, which is Biomanufacturing Technology Training Center, that's associated with NC State. And we have very similar unit operations that we do at full scale production. This training center has training scale, and we're able to send colleagues that may not be completely familiar with this nature of biomanufacturing to that center to be able to get trained, to be able to get introduced, and to be able to have a very safe environment to learn, to fail, right? So that's one initiative. And then another initiative that we're working with is a partnership with North Carolina A&T, that university, to be able to build a lab center and other at scale process steps. These two partnerships, I would say, really help to make sure that folks that we onboard into the organization, they're able to understand not just what to do in terms of executing the process, but they understand why we do it, understanding at a deeper level the science behind what they're doing. We found from a learning and development perspective that if operators, let's just take production operators, for example, if they are understanding more than just the surface level of what they're doing, they understand more of the why behind it and the science as a foundation, from a human error perspective, usually end up having much fewer of that as it pertains to executing the manufacturing process.
Absolutely. Absolutely. No, and what you were talking about earlier, I mean, the one other thing that, I think you talked about in a previous engagement was about candidate experience. Even if you don't end up hiring somebody, it's also about their candidate experience. Like you said, because it's a small world, you're going to see them again, and so you want to really ensure that candidate experience from the start through the interview process is spot on. So that's great. Natalie, you've been with large pharma, now being with a really aggressive startup environment. What's your perspective on the topic?
Yeah, well, I can certainly agree with what Bob and Rashid were saying in terms of those are great traits to look for in candidates. And I think those apply for large pharma and for startups. I would say maybe some specific things or strengths that I would recommend for startup candidates is looking for people that have comfort with ambiguity and who are known for being flexible, because that's part of a startup is you're trying something, maybe you fail and then you flex. Also people that have a higher appetite for risk, who see failure as a chance to learn versus I failed and that's bad. So failure is good. And I would say something that someone told me before I came to a startup company was there's always resource constraints for a startup company because you're trying to closely manage your cash. And so that means that there will be serious prioritization, and also that people have to be willing to roll up their sleeves and do both the strategic and the tactical work. I find myself having to bounce between, okay, now I've got to go write an SOP myself, and then I have to go, figure out the site strategy. And I would say, people that aren't coming from that type of an entrepreneurial builder background, some of them will come to a startup and they were told all these things, but then they're surprised that, oh, there's not a process or a system in place for doing these tasks. And so, the reaction from candidates there is either, they throw up their hands and they give up and say that's not for me, or they adapt and they see this as an opportunity, like, hey, there's not a process built for how to do this. And actually I get to build it and make it ideal for how I like to do things. So, for people that are very independent and like to build things themselves, it's great.
Yeah, no, agreed. And, don't undermine also the opportunity at a CDMO because you're engaging with various other clients that fast pace and the maybe the variety of SOPs and the variety of potential products that you get assimilated with over your tenure versus maybe working at a plant with one system, right? So, so those are just things to think about as a candidate. I have to add this round robin little question in here at the end is, what advice can you offer talent as they prepare for their next interview? What are those traits or life examples or work examples that stand out to you when a candidate's expressing themselves or their previous experience? What are those things that they should really try to highlight? Who would like to go first? I
can jump in here. And
Go ahead.
Natalie, you definitely hit on it quite a bit just now. We are shifting our focus from a Merck perspective, where traditionally we would go after, like, what university did you go to? Mm-hmm. And where'd you do your MBA, or where'd you get your master's in chemical engineering, right? And that could be the selling point for a candidate in the interview. The times are changing right now, especially right for the reason I just mentioned, that our candidate pools are starting to dry up with so much competition across the industry right now. We are competing, so we can either compete in that same exact pool, or we can be strategic and identify ways to broaden that pool. So we're pursuing a bit more of a skills first strategy, as opposed to some of the traditional hiring strategies of the past. So what we're looking for is we're looking for candidates that are able to really speak to their experiences and the relevant skill set that they have that we're looking for from a Merck perspective. In addition to that, right, the behavioral elements and the, like, used to call them soft skills, right? More like professional skills in terms of communication and collaboration, like time management. Are you able to understand complex ideas and find ways to simplify them as you then go to communicate those to others that you're working with? Like these are the types of skills and these are the types of professional behaviors that we're looking for. So we ask specific questions during the interview process to be able to pull that out and recognize if our candidates are coming with some past experiences along those lines. Like that ends up being more of the priority for us now, as opposed to specific degrees that a candidate may have, professional certifications that a person may have. We're looking a little bit more for those relevant skills, and then obviously those professional behaviors, formerly called soft skills.
Wonderful. Bob?
Yeah, I think Rashid nailed it. Competition for resources is very, very tight, especially some critical roles. We're a CDMO, so Natalie kind of chimed in a little bit of this, and you did too, is, you're going to see many, many programs across your life at a CDMO, or even in a year versus at a larger pharma, right? The soft skills are way important. If you can communicate across cultures, if you can communicate across matrix teams, if you can show me how your experiences, even though they're not in the same industry, how you applied your thought process to it and overcame something in an industry that's different than ours, but it's a similar problem. That goes a long ways. I can train you the technical stuff for GMP. That's no big deal. But if you have the soft skills and you're able to think creatively and drive and juggle many tasks at one time, right? A CDMO, 30 projects going on at a site at any given time. I got 15 sites. You have to be able to prioritize. You have to be able to manage your time, right? So those traits exist in other industries. And if you can show me those, then that gives me a bigger talent pool, right? So that's what I'm looking for.
That's awesome. Natalie, anything from you?
Yeah. Just in terms of maybe some advice for candidates that are coming to an interview, the best advice I've gotten is to be prepared with a good failure story, a really good one, like where you you really mess something up, and obviously you want to share, what did you learn from that, or how did you fix this mess that you created, but a really good one. And then the other piece would be just remembering during the interview process to be thinking in terms of what's in it for the company to hire me. Once you get an offer, then you can think about like what's in it for me and negotiating that part. But during the interview process, always making what's in it for them to hire me. Why am I a great choice? And I guess one more thing to add that I look for in candidates interviewing is, have they been a team player? I think that is so important in the biomanufacturing environment, because it's all about working on teams. And so whether that's experience on a sports team, or they've been in the military, or they accomplish something as a team, please bring those types of things up. I love this book by Patrick Lencioni, which is the ideal team player. And it's talking about, some people are humble, some are hungry, some are smart. But, you want to be all three of those and not overuse the humble, the hungry, or the smart. And so the ideal team player is kind of able to do all three of those things. And you get that by doing things like playing sports. And sometimes you're not the star player, but you're helping others to win the game.
I can't agree with you more. I'm coaching both of my daughter's soccer teams and, going through that every day. So that resonates really, really well, both professionally and personally. So thank you so much. We'll go ahead and jump into our next section here, which is the competitive landscape. I know we already touched on it a little bit. Some of you are in extremely, competitive environments, geographically, things like that. So the first question is, how do you identify and retain talent in that competitive market? Some of you touched on it already, but Rashid, you're in RTP, you touched on it. Natalie, you're in Boston, probably the most competitive market out there. So, maybe what are any additional thoughts to what you can do to retain once you've established people at your company? How about to keep them there? Rashid, don't mind if I start with you.
Sure. Yeah, it's we can't just continue to like raise the salary or the total compensation. I'll be honest about it, right? At the end of the day, we still are trying to make sure that we're ensuring patient access to our products at a very reasonable cost, right? So we can't just continue to raise the salary, and that's going to be the way to keep people here and keep people happy. And also, right, I think we're all familiar, like the research has not shown that just like from a financial compensation perspective, research has shown that that's not enough to be able to keep an employee in their seat. So we need to essentially create an entire ecosystem where employees have access to continuous learning and development opportunities, maybe even beyond their specific area of responsibility. So we do have that. Workday is a fantastic tool that Merck has used enterprise-wide. And it's able to, not just from like an internal job board, but what we do is we call them gigs. These are internal opportunities for employees to be able to support either within their line of business or a completely different line of business or completely different geographic location, where they're able to use their skills to support a need, or they're able to use some of the skills that may be relevant to learn something new. But we have that program we've been using for the past few years, and it's been really successful. In addition to that, right, we offer tuition reimbursement, because we mentioned that we're going for a skills first, where we're pivoting from looking at folks that may have 4-year degrees, advanced degrees, and we're taking another look and looking at recredentialing some of our roles. They may not require a 4-year degree, right? Someone can be very successful in their role with a high school diploma or equivalent. However, you might reach a ceiling, because some of our roles, especially some of our senior level roles, they currently do require having 4-year degrees. So an employee can enter the workforce, they can prove themselves, and they can be reimbursed to go back to school to go out and gain those additional credentials. These are just a couple examples of the things that we're doing to try and ensure a positive working experience for our employees, and be able to retain the talent that we acquire.
Awesome. No, I mean, Merck's internship program, and they've got so many great like gold standard programs out there. So I'm so glad you were able to speak on that. Natalie, if you wouldn't mind maybe talking a little bit about, looking outside Boston, bringing talent in there. How do you retain them in such a competitive, high, fast-paced moving environment that you're in?
Yeah, that is the reality in the greater Boston region, that it's the world's leading biotech hub, over 1,000 companies in the area. And so there's a lot of movement of talent, which isn't a bad thing. People are learning so much by moving to different companies. But there is an overall recognition that we're going to have a talent shortage in the area if we don't do anything. And so, the government leadership in Massachusetts has recognized that and is looking for ways to help build the talent pool. One that my company was looking at leveraging was Mass Bio Ed has a life sciences apprenticeship program, which I thought was great. This is a way to get talent from other areas and giving them an apprenticeship opportunity, reskilling them so that they can move into the life sciences sector. So definitely want to use something like that to create new talent. So we need more people in the industry. Another example I wanted to share is looking at another untapped pool of talent, military veterans. They have wonderful transferable skills. That was how I entered the industry, and I joined a biologics manufacturing site straight out of the Army. I didn't have that experience. I joined at a time when biologics was still fairly new, and I would say, that's something that I did in my startup site, was hiring somebody out of the military, and he did great. He was really, one of our best employees actually that we hired. And so, there's always people that say, oh, you can't do that. They don't know enough about the industry. And I would really question that bias, because people have this amazing ability to learn. So I think, looking at different pools of talent is important in this region. And then from a retention perspective, I really recommend focusing on making sure you're very selective about your managers and leadership. People, they say that people leave their managers and not companies. And so, as we were hiring our key leadership talent for a new site, we were very selective in making sure that we were hiring great leaders that would take care of their people, that would keep them motivated. That pays off in great dividends in terms of people wanting to come to work, feeling like they can trust their manager. So yeah, I would focus on, that management leadership being, top tier.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Invest in leadership. Absolutely. Bob, if you don't mind, I'll move over to you. Your geography, at least in Kentucky, is a little less competitive around you, but obviously much harder to find that niche skill sets. But you lead across multiple locations. How do you attract and retain talent?
Well, I think many of the things that Rashid mentioned are the same type of things we do. We have at Piramal Learning University, which have over 20,000 courses that people can take by themselves, or management has assigned those courses to them. We give all our management staff IDPs, individual development program plans, and those can focus on additional skills, soft and or hard skills. The system also supports, being ready for specific certifications like project management professional, something like that, right? We do talent reviews. I'm sure Merck is well aware of this too. They do them twice a year. We look for succession planning and how to grow people. I really like Natalie's point on the military, because I'm ex-military also. And I found over the years, I have pushed military recruiting at many of the sites that I was overseeing, right? We do cultural training because we have 3 different unique cultures from a geography standpoint. So we do culture training at all the sites so people can move back and forth. We have an executive training program, of course. We do have an internship both locally at all the different plants that partner with the local universities and maybe 2-year colleges, something like that. We also have a program that works with Ivy League universities, where these people come in and they work at 3 or 4 or 5 different facilities across a 6-month window, 6 to 12-month window, and they get to basically touch different aspects of the business, from small molecule API to large molecule to OSD to fill finish, right? So those are some of the areas. We also spend a lot of time, and Natalie was right on this one too, looking at the leadership teams, the site leadership teams, and their managing director or site VP, making sure they have the soft skills and the culture to drive an organization, because she mentioned that people tend to leave their manager, not the company, right? And if the managers engage those employees and build bonds, and they may still be driven on timelines, but if they're honest and they support those people, you'll get them sticking around a lot longer. The one area that I think as a business unit across all the sites are struggling with now a little bit, and I think I see this in the industry as well. There seems to be a group of people age-wise that come to your sites and they basically want to be promoted every year to 1.5 to 2 years, right? Frankly, in 3 years, they think they should be CEO. They may start as a manager, right? retaining those people is a little more difficult because I think they've got the message previously that they should jump jobs every 2 years to grow. And technically they can. The problem is eventually you're going to jump jobs so many times that nobody's going to keep you around because they're going to see your resume. You had 14 2-year jumps or 4 2-year jumps, whatever it is. Why hire you? Because you'll be gone in 2 years, unless you have a specific role that you're going to get rid of in 2 years, right? So that's the group I think we're still learning. It's not that old a generation. So we're focusing on that.
Oh, that's our next section that we're going to talk a little bit about. But I wanted to throw this one last question in before we exit this section is how important is it to network with like-minded people? Maybe one or two of you can share maybe a personal story or a suggestion to really drive home why proper networking can greatly improve your professional opportunity.
Absolutely. So I went to Drexel University, right? And I studied mechanical engineering. I had a friend of mine, a little personal. I'm from Brooklyn, New York originally. Okay. Had a friend of mine who also was from Brooklyn, and she was also in the mechanical engineering program at Drexel. Right. When we graduated, we kind of went our separate ways. She joined Merck, and I went into the automotive industry. And when we were looking at the recession, right, in that 2008-ish time frame, started to see production operations ramp down a bit because of demand, and was wondering, okay, well, what am I going to do? And then started to experience rounds of layoffs. And all the while, I'd kept in close contact with my friend and former schoolmate, and I reached out and said, hey, I'm ready to explore some other opportunities in different industry. When you think about pharmaceuticals, one thing that's guaranteed is that people are going to continue to be born, right? And people are going to, unfortunately, continue to get sick. And that's when you have vaccines and medicines and therapies that are able to help in that space. So regardless of what's happening in the economy, there's going to always be need for our products and treatments. So reached out, was able to, it took maybe 6 weeks. She had made some internal connections to some job postings that I had seen on the Merck job board. She made some internal connections, and I ended up having my pick between, it was 2 different offers. I had my pick between the 2. And the majority of that work was her just making some connections, me having her as a connection, right? It's all about networking. What you know and your performance, that is a given, or that at least that should be a given, that you perform well and you work hard. A lot of times folks that end up getting stuck, it's because they haven't made the right connections that are able to unlock some of those doors that they're looking to enter.
Awesome. No, great story, Rashid. Thank you for sharing that. Anybody else?
Yeah, I'll kind of jump in here because networking is very important. So I'm an anomaly more ways than one, but I don't have a degree. So I was working for a company called Novo Nordisk, fairly well off in a North Carolina facility. I had no biologics experience at all, but because I had worked with people over the years that had left and gone other places, and I had maybe giving them breaks in certain areas to help them in their career. I was cold called by a company in Biologics to come run a site for them and work for them, all based off of the people I had helped in their career along the path, right? So that networking can pay off in more ways than one. And with no biologic experience, ended up running biologic sites, and I've been doing this for quite a while. So it's support those people who are doing good, and get to know them and network with them, because it will come back and benefit you in the end.
Amen. Amen. Awesome. Well, we'll go ahead and move over to the our last section here, which really, candidate aspirations and the evolution of the industry. So right now, obviously, I think we've touched on a little bit, but at a global scale, we're seeing a multi-generational workforce, right? So this new generation that's entering the workforce, they have different aspirations. I think we've touched on a couple of these things. Then other previous generations that maybe we're used to working with. So how does that translate in your company or for your leadership style? And Natalie, I don't mind starting with you if you don't mind.
Yeah. No, it's great to be continuing to learn about this and not assuming that, what's motivating for people of my age is motivating for the next generation. And I went to a workshop recently where I learned about some things that the workforce of the future is looking for and is inspired by. And one of those things was sustainability. So companies that are taking action to be more sustainable, and that is overt and is part of the goals of the company. And another piece that newer generations are looking for is that they're going to have a chance to learn and grow when they go to this organization, that they won't just be stuck.
Right.
And then, the final piece is that, and this one was surprising to me that people would know this, is the opportunity to learn about lean and operational excellence, which I think is very fun and exciting to learn, very relevant to biomanufacturing. But that has to be part of what the company's offering. And I guess the other thing I'd add is, for this kind of COVID generation, this workforce that's coming out of moving to completely remote school and work, that work-life flexibility has to really be in the picture. There has to be paths for that. So that I think is something we just have to accept in the new age of work. For a company like Resilience that was born during the COVID pandemic area, that's a little bit easier because that's how the company started up, was during that type of environment. But I do see it's challenging then to convert to that later and change the lifestyle elsewhere. But I think those are things that we have to keep first and foremost in front of our minds when trying to recruit this newer generation.
Awesome. Rashid, how about for you, sir?
Yeah, I agree with you, Natalie. The newer generation entering the workforce right now is much more socially conscious. And when you're thinking about ESG from like environmental, social, and governance perspectives, candidates they're doing their homework, right? They're doing their homework, and they want to make sure that companies' values are aligned with their own personal values. I want to go back to a point that Bob hit on a little bit earlier in the conversation about now basically what is becoming the norm is that you'll have employees that'll join an organization and really want to move very quickly through the organization, and they recognize the environment that they're in, and they may not stay very long. Like if I don't get what I'm looking for, I'll take my talents elsewhere, right? And we've spent quite a bit of time trying to understand how do we get ahead of this? How do we fight this? How do we fight this? And I think that what we'll probably come to realize is that we may need to embrace this as the new normal. And when I say that, we've evaluated and have begun to implement certain countermeasures to this new paradigm. And there's two ways that I believe you can try and stay one step ahead of this, where you're playing that whole attrition game. One is you need to have very robust training programs. Yep. So we need to leverage the technology that exists right now from an artificial intelligence, from an augmented and virtual reality perspective, to be able to get new employees trained and qualified as quickly as possible, right? As complex as our manufacturing processes are, we need to ensure that our operators and our production associates, that they get trained very quickly. So that's one arm of the strategy. The other arm of the strategy is having a very robust knowledge management program where the scientists and the experts and all the information, all the data that they're able to gather, all the tacit knowledge that they're able to glean throughout their tenure with the company, we find ways to be able to effectively and efficiently extract that knowledge so it can be accessed by folks that come that come after they've chosen to leave and move on. Right. Those two things, I think, are the two countermeasures that should be the focal point of any company or any organization that's trying to combat this attrition paradigm. I mean, that's what it is, and I do think that it's going to become the new normal.
Yeah, absolutely. No, with a couple minutes left, I want to move to our last question that I'd love all of you to give your perspective on, which is, to you, what is the biggest challenge facing biomanufacturing industry as a whole right now? And how can we get ready to overcome these challenges for our future? What should we be thinking about now so that we can combat that in the very near future? Bob, if you don't mind, I'll start with you.
Sure. So, I'm from a CDMO business mindset. So, for us, actually, time to close has increased dramatically over the COVID period, right? And that affects staffing levels and, programs starting or stopping to grow capacity and those type of things. I don't think it's going to change anytime in the near future because, it really goes back to the funding to the small, mid-sized companies. And they're looking to save more of their money in their bank account up front versus putting it out. So when you're trying to plan on how you're going to attack all these additional programs, many times you have to increase staff over time, right? So, it's putting that pipeline in place, but yet being able to pull the trigger on it a little later date or shorter notice, right? And as many of the facts Rashid brought up around the new generation of people, it's how do you capture those people at the last minute when they're looking to jump and move between jobs already, right? So we're working on that. I think that's going to probably go for another couple of years. I do want to say one thing about Rashid, what he said a minute ago. I think it is the new norm we're moving to with that generation. It's not will it be, it is. And retaining that generation is going to be key, right? So that's probably our biggest challenge right now.
Awesome. Thanks, Bob. Natalie, how about for you?
Yeah, I think that really access to talent is the biggest challenge that we're facing in the biomanufacturing space. And I would say it's due to two things. One is that the overall workforce is shrinking. So labor participation has shrunk for a variety of reasons. It is what it is. And at the same time, the requirements that we have on the people we're looking for have increased. So we need manufacturing technicians with even higher skills than they had in the past. They've got to be able to do digital activities, automation. I'm working at a facility that has gene therapy, advanced modality products, which is like biologics plus some additional complexities. And so, I think we're looking to upskill the talent we bring in, and then there's a smaller pool. So that's a big challenge. It's just accessing the talent. And I think that, we're going to have to get better at coming up with, boot camps, or how do we quickly get people from, maybe outside the industry, upskill them appropriately and get them into the workforce. And we have one example of that at one of our drug product sites, the one in Ohio. They have an aseptic training center where you could quickly bring people in and teach them the right skills, that where they're not actually going to cause any impact to the product. It's a training center. So I think more things like that we're either doing internally at our companies, or that, I think in Massachusetts, we're looking for partnering with schools to actually help us do this. So yeah, how do we quickly get people trained up for the workforce?
And the government knows it too. I have friends over at BARDA, and they've got a workforce team that is out there meeting with people and trying to figure that out. They're even thinking about things like, how do we use our COVID testing trailers to move them into, maybe small pilot plants that they can strategically place around the United States to quickly, move talent through a training facility. So that's really cool. Just kind of, again, out of the box ideas. We've got to start thinking about that. Rashid, if you don't mind bringing us home on this topic.
Yeah, there's a couple things. In my personal opinion, when we look at biomanufacturing and the industry at large and some of the headwinds, I mean, when we look from a regulatory perspective, regulatory expectations, like they're always continuing to become more and more and more aggressive, right?
Yep.
We want to ensure that the products that regulatory bodies are approving to be distributed to people, to animals, because we have an animal health business, is that it's as safe as possible, right? So the expectations are becoming increasingly stringent, and like we say, the cost of compliance, like the cost of compliance is ever growing. But how do you try and overcome some of the, from like a manufacturing and GMP perspective, how do you ensure that your sterility assurance programs and processes are as robust as possible, right? How do you ensure that your product warehousing and storage conditions are as robust as possible? These are like significant. When we talk about investment that's required to be able to meet regulatory expectations, they are significant. Another another example might be from a legislation perspective, like domestic legislation, right? Drug pricing. We're coming under pressure, regardless of whatever your politics are.
Yep.
I think everybody in Washington agrees that the cost of some pharmaceutical products are just a bit too high. And how do we get to a point where we can offer them at a competitive rate, so that way we have the largest amount of access to these, because everybody deserves to be able to live a healthy life, right? So how do you get ahead of that? I think a lot of it goes back to Natalie's point in terms of your talent, right? We are in a space where technologies are growing at such a rapid pace that we need to be able to have the talent that's able to leverage and harness this technology that exists. So when we talk about artificial intelligence, when we talk about augmented reality, when we talk about new cold chain technologies that exist to be able to deliver products across the globe to certain regions of the area that may formerly have been inaccessible, like these are the ways that you try and overcome some of these in terms of the cost of manufacturing. You can overcome some of these challenges if you're able to access and reach far more consumers than you formerly were able to. You can identify ways to be able to manufacture much more cheaper, much more efficiently if you're leveraging the technology that exists.
You nailed it. And it's for the greater good of the world. So with that, I just want to thank you all for this engaging and dynamic discussion. I thought it was amazing about the biomanufacturing landscape. And I want to express, obviously, my sincerest gratitude to all three of you, Bob, Natalie, Rashid. Thank you for your invaluable insights and expertise. So, as we reflect on this conversation, there were, two main takeaways that really emerged for me for this biomanufacturing field. First, adaptability, right? This industry is always rapidly evolving, right? The dynamics are reshaping. So we always need to have that new approach. So you guys really emphasize the importance of staying adaptable and always staying up with your skills and being able to navigate these. The others was, the significance of building a robust professional network. And I don't think that could be overstated, right? Is staying connected, meeting with others. Rashid, you shed light on the importance of, diverse, inclusive networks that will foster that talent development long term. So, always keeping those doors open to future opportunities. And remember that people you meet, you're going to meet again. It's a very small world. So now we're going to move to our Q&A portion of the event. You will experience a quick pause as we move to this other interactive section in the technology. So please don't close your browser or disconnect. And we'll get onto those questions right away.